So the more business savvy of you may know about different methods of prioritization. For example, there's the Eisenhower Matrix, which is a prioritization method based on identifying what things are urgent, what things are important, and then it just creates an axis of urgent and important to figure out what needs your attention at any specific time. And the idea is that you want to be working on things that are urgent and important the most. The things that are important but not urgent, you want to be working on those in the time that you have, for example, free time, because those are the things that could really make a difference long term. Like, for example, it might not be urgent and important that you develop good financial habits right now, but 6 years from now, that learning that you will have done might be the thing that really separates your financial situation, and it could have been the sort of the deviation from the arrow. As soon as the arrow is fired, you tap it a little bit. Eventually when it lands, it's going to be far different to where it would have landed otherwise. So the urgent and not important things you kind of need to do as a necessity, or if you can, you delegate it to someone else. And then the not important, not urgent things, you either just don't do them, or you just give them to someone else as well. So the prioritization matrix, this one that I mentioned is called the Eisenhower Matrix, is one way of prioritizing. When you're working as a doctor, you learn a different method of prioritization, which is really similar to the Eisenhower Matrix, but it's kind of different in a way as well. And it's kind of different in an important way. And I think if you're someone that gets overwhelmed easily, or you find that your mind is a bit chaos, or you've got heaps of tasks and you're not really getting through them, I think this way of thinking about prioritization could be something that's helpful. For me, I like to live a busy life, and I like to have lots of things on my plate. I can't remember the last time I worked less than 80 hours a week. There's always sort of stuff that I'm trying to juggle, and for me that means that I'm living a full and enriching and fulfilling life, knowing that my time is being spent doing stuff that I enjoy doing, and that's where I want to put my energy towards. So it's a willing expenditure of time. And because I, like a lot of you watching, will want to do lots of things. You'll want to pick up a new hobby. You want to exercise or go for a run after work. You want to eat well. You want to, prep your lunches. You want to spend time with family and friends. You want to, have ample time for friendships and relationships. You'll want all of these things. But I also know, even just looking around with my peers, that a lot of people, they get home from work and then they're just like, okay, that's it. Like, I'm done for the day. I'm done for the whole week. It's just survive, eat dinner, do a couple chores. It's 9 p.m. No time to do anything. Need to go, wash up and go to sleep. So that's what the daily routine ends up being for a lot of people, especially a lot of doctors and other people that work in these kind of high hour shift kind of positions where there's not a lot of flexibility there. And so there are things that you can do partly involving this method of prioritization. It's not going to be the magic bullet that solves everything, but I do notice that a lot of the people that I see that struggle with this don't have a very consistent and systematic method of prioritization. For me personally, if I didn't systematically prioritize on a daily basis, I would easily very well get overwhelmed. So the method of prioritization that you learn when you're a doctor is what you learn when you're on call. And there's two components to it. One is triaging based on severity and the level of urgency that this requires. The other is how much time is this going to take? And then the other component is how serious is the consequence of failure. And that's kind of different to the triaging in a way. So you might get 30 different jobs that you need to do on a on-call shift. You might arrive on a night shift and then you'd have 30 jobs that you need to do. Okay, so the first thing is you're going to look through these jobs and think, okay, what looks more serious? What looks like it's going to take a lot of time? What are the things that are potentially more complex than they may seem. And then you're going to decide based on that priority what jobs that you're going to do in what order to maximize your efficiency. Now, the order that you do things is not always related to the level of urgency, because you may have a job that will take 2 minutes that is in the same ward as another urgent job, but that 2-minute job may be low urgency. In that situation, it's better to actually just get that job out of the way with when you're on that ward, because otherwise you're wasting more time walking back and forth and just navigating around. Just by doing it sort of geographically saves a lot of time. Now that's given that that slightly more arbitrary 2-minute job was at least a minimum level of importance and urgency that it does need to get done. So if the consequence of failure of that is so low that it doesn't even register that minimum threshold, that's a job that you just wouldn't do. It's not urgent. It's not important at all. So you can see how balancing that consequence of not doing the job means that there are certain things, even though you're triaging based on importance, there are certain things that you're not even going to do anyway, because even the 2 minutes spent doing it is a waste of time. The other thing that you do is, in the time that it takes for you to go from job to job when you're walking between wards, is you're thinking about what you're going to be doing when you arrive at that ward. So that walking and staircase time is utilized. And so it means that the time efficiency and the prioritization is done extremely well, because the time pressure and the consequences of possible failure are so imminently clear. The flip side to this is that you get quite desensitized to other types of events. So for example, if you've got a friend who's worried about something and you've just been in this kind of like battlefield frontline healthcare zone, a lot of the times in your head you're just thinking like, man, this is so trivial. It just doesn't even matter compared to what you're normally used to dealing with. You get a bit desensitized to it. Now, in my opinion, a transferable effect of that desensitization is the sort of emotional compassion fatigue that happens at the end of the shifts. You've got a certain amount of energy that you can give to a particular day, and then at the end of the day, you've drained all of it. You've spent so much energy prioritizing these very important tasks that have a high urgency and a high sense of responsibility to it. When you get home, in comparison, the things you need to do in your own life, like exercising or whatever, it just seems less important. And so you're less incentivized and less motivated to do various things, and it just feels less relevant to do that. It's like it would be nice rather than a must do. Now, I disagree, because those things are important but not urgent. Exercising is important but not urgent. Having a lifestyle where there's a balance of work and life is important but not urgent. But it is important. It's just as important as anything else that you're doing during work. The only difference is that the consequence is not paid out straight away. There isn't an instantaneous feedback. The consequence is slowly burning out. The consequence is feeling less and less motivated about work. The consequence is losing relationships and friendships and dropping hobbies and finding that your life is just becoming a lot more gray and dull. Now, research says that people that are more involved in different activities not only have better mental health, but actually tend to perform better in their particular role as well. So that means that if you're a doctor or whatever you are, and you're wanting to do well in your job, there is a real benefit to doing things outside of your job at the same level of importance and responsibility and intensity that you would do at work. So how many of you can say that you handle your exercise or your diet or your hobbies as seriously, that you place as much importance on it as you would your job? The common line of thought would be that it's not as relevant because a job is a professional responsibility, and there's a certain, you have to reach a certain level of ownership on a particular role for that career path, or to be a professional. It's like a sense of identity that you have. But let me ask you this: what about the sense of identity of who you are as a person? Is that not also just as important? Is that not actually more important than your sense of identity as a professional, whatever you are? And in my view, the way that prioritization happens, and this is certainly the way that I prioritize it for myself, there is an identity that I have, but I'm also aware of the other identities that I have and what I need to do to preserve those, because those identities feed into each other. A lot of people will ask me, how was it that I was spending 30 or 40 hours a week working on a side project or multiple side projects while going through medical school and spending 30 or 40 hours a week at the hospital or doing, like medical related things? What I say is I was able to do that because I was spending 30 to 40 hours a week doing this other stuff. That was what gave me the energy. That's what gave me the fuel to the fire that kept things going so that I could create that balance. Like when I was busy, and when I am busy, that's when I'm actually getting more fulfillment and more satisfaction and more fuel. And it's not for everyone. But if you're watching this and you're thinking that there are certain aspects of your life that you're a little bit dissatisfied about, or there's certain things that you want to pick up, and there's certain things that you want to do, or you feel like that fire and that fuel is kind of going out, then ask yourself, how much attention and time are you giving to the things outside of that, outside of the work, outside of the totally compulsory? How much attention and focus are you giving to it? And maybe, just maybe, there is a benefit to putting more attention into those to see what effect it has. You've got really little to lose, and you've got potentially a much more fulfilling and enjoyable and colorful life to gain. It's a message that I tell to my students very often, and I think it's one that has personally served me really well, and hopefully it serves you too. So if you listen to this and you think that that's something that you'll be willing to try, set those minimum viable goals. Just put your foot out there and just creep forward outside of your norm, and just challenge yourself to do a little bit more. Challenge yourself to get home, and instead of going straight to whatever you are normally doing, see if you can use your time like a busy on-call doctor would be using their time. After you finish work, where is your mind at on the drive home, on the walk home, before you get home? Is it on just winding down, or are you already buzzing about what you're going to be doing when you get home? Can you build up that excitement? Can you use that time that you would normally be spending on just relaxing or doing something else? Can you use that time to plan your evening? Can you use that time to think of ideas? Can you use that time to do some high level strategizing? Can you use that time to listen to an audible while you're driving and learn more about a particular thing that you're interested to learn about? When you do more of these things, the chances are that you're going to be more energized to do everything else. And one of the most common, if not the most common thing that I hear from students that I work with and professionals who want more out of their lives and want to do all these things but just can't find the time is, well, look, there's so much I want to do, but I barely have enough time and energy to do these other things. Well, the thing is the time you're spending, is it being spent efficiently? When you're washing dishes, do you need to be only washing dishes? Can you be listening to a podcast or something? Can you be having a Zoom call? Can you be having an interesting discussion? Can you be planning something? Can you be stacking your time on top of itself? When I was working at the hospital, I would be taking calls from students and talking to parents and students in the stairwell, moving from ward to ward. And it just kept the ball rolling. And that feeling and that flow allowed me to feel more energized. And I think it's really true. When someone says that they barely have enough time and barely have enough energy to do more than just the bare minimum, I think that's a completely true statement. What I'm saying is, can you create more time? Can you find the pockets? Can you find the time you spend doing something and realize that you can do something else at the same time? If you don't have enough energy, can you create more energy for yourself? And often the creating of more energy, as I'm sure you probably know, doesn't come from taking the nap. You don't get more energized when you've got less to do. When you've got a lazy Sunday afternoon, you generally feel like a lazy Sunday afternoon. So that's just my perspective on things. This is a topic that comes up almost on a weekly basis with the work that I do. So I'm sure I'll be talking about this more and from different angles, but it's just a super nuanced topic, and there's so many different perspectives and realities and situations that people are in. And this is genuinely a conversation that I would love to have more and want to hear, from multiple different perspectives. What are your barriers? What are the things that you're trying to do? And what are the things that you're trying to do to overcome those? How has that worked for you, and how has that failed? And maybe if you share that, then that will give me an opportunity to think, is there another angle that you've hit? Now, whether you choose to actually implement that is going to be up to you, obviously. But anyway, thanks for listening and watching so far. And if you've got any suggestions or if you've got your own story to share, then I'd love to hear it.